Hi, I'm Florine and I'm a developer.
And I'm Adrian and I'm a designer. And today we're going to talk about typographic systems.
So Adrian, I'm going to ask this question because you're obviously the designer here. What is a typographic system?
I have no idea. Basically, a typographic system is a way to...
I'm going to... this is going to be bullshit. You think about it, I'm going to pour us a drink, right?
Okay, if you pour us a drink, I'm going to think for a while.
Yeah. So, what we have here is... Actually, it's a reintroduced Dutch drink. It's called Exota.
It went bankrupt in the 70s, I think, so
yeah,
this has to be good.
But now it's produced in France, so... I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, it can only improve.
Yes, it's the lemon taste, and it has quite a nice bottle, so I'm going to open it. Let's see what it tastes like.
You going to embarrass us?
No.
Wow, that is loud.
That's cool, right?
That is loud. Didn't they go bankrupt over some scandal with exploding bottles last time?
I don't know. I'm not sure.
I think so. I think so.
Well, they're right on track.
They're right on track. Yeah, they at least they got the sound down pat. All right, so here goes nothing. Cheers.
As lemonade.
It's pretty good.
Yeah.
It's not too sweet. I like it. Good. The bottle is enormous though, so I'm going to move it off screen, if you don't mind. Through the magic of television, it disappeared.
Okay, so you had some time to think about.
Not really. I was, have ringing ears and stuff.
Okay.
But a typographic system is basically a way to make different styles of type related, and that can be done through hierarchy in sizing, for instance, or when you create contrast between different types. You can even do it with color, although color is not generally regarded to be part of the typographic system, but it mostly boils down to size and style for all intents and purposes that we're going to talk about today.
Okay, so that definition, is that also like a traditional what you would do in print, where you have for magazines, for instance, or for newspapers?
It's a bit different for the web because for print, for a long time they couldn't really make a system as such because there's no way to make the types physically relate. So they couldn't okay, we have style A and we use parts of style A to make style B. Yeah,
well, but implicitly you could. I mean,
you could, but you would visually pair them. You couldn't automate this process until modern typesetting systems came along.
So like when you have when you're talking about.
I'm talking about
LED,
60s, yeah.
Like LED type.
For instance, yeah. And with, you could do it in LaTeX, for instance. You could create type systems, and in InDesign, obviously, you can create type systems. InDesign is a bit weird because you can. Well,
I think there should be a distinction between I can make a sheet of paper and just put on there okay, for headers we're going to use font X, size Y. This is the leading. This is the weight. And then put a couple, and it's just like a Word document or whatever document I'm going to pass around. And again, this is the system we're going to use. So what you're more talking about is like automated systems where you would define, and then you say, okay, I just want header 1, and I want body copy or something like that.
Exactly, yeah. So where you could just apply a style, that would be one way to look at it, but also to make the properties of a style actually have some relation to each other. So if you say that they have some shared traits, for instance, so that you make all the headers are sans serif, for instance, or serif, and your body copy is a sans. So you create a contrast there, and that is a shared trait amongst body copies. So all the body copy would be a sans, and all your headers would be a serif.
Okay.
So that is also they have shared attributes basically.
Okay.
But there is some debate about what is included in a typographic system and what isn't. So for us on the web, it's mostly about hierarchy and the order of reading. So how do you make sure that the user or the person who visits your website understands, okay, this is the most important thing on this page, and then this, and then that. So you keep to that flow basically. And it's about contrast. So you can differentiate between the different styles. So people can actually identify a header easily.
So you always use certain style attributes for headers, and then you can easily see that this is a header.
It's easier to do that, yeah.
Yeah. Do you consider things like margins and spacing to be part of that system, or is that something that is closely related to the system but not really part of the system?
I wouldn't really include it in the system because there is, as your use changes, your spacing may have to change as well. And if you define that in the system, then you're going to be stuck with that, and you're going to have to make exceptions on top of that. So that
exceptions are never a good thing.
Probably not, no. And it's hard to maintain that it's a system if there's like 90,000 exceptions to it.
Yeah.
So that's why I generally don't do it. And also colors are generally not regarded part of the system, mostly because they can change. For instance, if you set text on a black background, you're going to need to change the colors usually to make it still legible. So these things are usually not considered part of the typographic system.
Okay, so we've talked a little bit about what's the typographic system, and also we edged a bit toward what it would be in on the web.
Yeah.
But why would I want to define one or have one instead of just, okay, I have here a header and I'm going to put some font on it and with a style on it and something like that.
The most important thing is from a user's perspective, it's that it's consistent. So you don't have the different levels of headers change throughout your website. So you don't have like an H1 on one page is this size and this style and this weight, for instance, and on another page an H1 is completely different.
So you want to prevent that you'll have 200 different font sizes and font styles in your website.
Well, that's what you want to prevent, but it is basically a twofold thing, for me at least. On one hand, it's for the user, so they don't have to relearn what is the structure in this site every time they visit a new page. And on the other hand, I don't want to do extra work. I don't want to have to define styles over and over and over and over again. I just want to do it once and then apply them as needed. So I don't have to do more work, basically.
Okay.
So that's the most important thing.
I guess that's a pretty good reason to use one. So how do you get started? Let's say you have a new project. What do you generally do? Are you going to define a type system first, or are you first going to design some structure and some elements, and then you will try out different fonts there and kind of distill your typographic system, and then you can use it in subsequent pages or subsequent elements, or how does that work for you?
For me, it's a bit of a trial and error thing. When I start, I usually start with elements first because I need to make the type match the content and its surroundings.
Okay.
So I can't really decide, I want to use this type and then just work from there. That's usually not a good way to find the right match. And this usually comes down to testing out different combinations of styles and types, or type families. So you can compare them, or how do they work together. And if you have some elements created already, then you can actually make a real life test of it. So you can actually apply them in your design and see, okay, it works here. Here it's a bit weak. This could be better, or maybe you can make it better by just changing the attributes, or maybe you just have to change to a different font family, or you have to change to a different style altogether. It really depends on the project.
Is that so you have like a default type sheet, like I have this document where there are like different kinds of headers, body copy, intro copy, etc., and then you're going to play with that, or you're actually you rather apply them directly to your partial design?
It depends on the project. I mean, for many of my clients, the typography is already set. So you're going to have to...
Like brand guidelines.
Yes. So you have some play in there, but not much. And I do try to avoid loading custom fonts whenever I can. So for body copy, I don't think it's a great idea to load like a ton of styles. just for that. And we have to adhere to brand guidelines, so you have to sort of work your way through that. And sometimes brands don't have web fonts defined yet, so you can find some wiggle room in there.
Okay.
But usually it comes down to you have to work with a standard web font, and you basically find something that works with it.
Okay.
At least that's usually the case in my projects. And I really like, for instance, tools like FontFlame, which is a Tinder for fonts, which is
swipe.
which is as ridiculous as it sounds, but it actually works pretty well, and it's kind of fun. I also really like, for instance, FontShop. Also have pretty good fonts where you can just test them and see how they work.
Well, that's kind of isolated. You can't really see them in context.
You can't see them in context. Yeah, that's a problem. So it would be much easier to just load them from, say, Google Fonts and then play with them.
Okay. So that's a good one as well.
And I do like to make like overview pages where I can see how do the different header styles, for instance, look together.
Yeah, exactly. Well, like I said, it's like a type sheet.
Yeah, so it's basically like a standard content page where you just have all the different typographic elements clumped together. Even though they wouldn't naturally occur this way, it's still nice to see, okay, this is the relationship between at least the headers, and this is the relationship
and
between...
that's also something you can reuse across the project.
Yes, that's generally something you try to reuse.
Okay, so we talked about, we talked about matching different font faces, the different styles, but how do you go about creating the relation between the font size of the H1, the H2, the H3, and the body copy, for instance?
There are pretty good tools for this as well. There's, for instance, Typescale or Modular Scale, which are both font scaling tools, so you can see different header styles and how they relate in size, and you can actually set ratios. So you can set like 1.5 ratio to the next style and so on and so forth.
I think Modular Scale does this is when you, for instance, have two different fonts and different fonts scale differently, because one font can be bigger at 16 pixels or 16 points. It can be bigger than another one, depending on X height or whatever. So with Modular Scale, you can actually have multiple sets of scalings. So that's
pretty cool. That's really nice.
Quite cool. Yeah.
Although, I mean, I like these tools, but I don't use them that often because I can set ratios in SAS by myself. I mean, that's not really...
That's not the hard part.
That's definitely not the hard part.
Okay. Yeah.
So speaking of SAS, I can demonstrate real quick what our setup real easy looks like.
That would be actually a good idea.
Cool. Let's have a look.
Okay, so here's our example. We have set up a basic type sheet. It has a H1, some meta information, intro, etc., body copy, and some other headers, right?
Yep. So basically we have this 1 through 3 we have in here. And this is a very simple, very basic setup for a type sheet. It's not as elaborate as it might be for some other project, but for our demonstration intents, it'll do.
Okay, so what we do is we actually set up a couple of mix-ins that will define the different type styles. So we have a type style for the header 1. It says it's a serif and it's 220% in size. We have a type header 2, 3, some intro copy, body copy, and some smaller text for meta information.
Exactly, yeah.
And what we do is we apply them to the different headers, the paragraph for the body copy, and some classes for meta information and the intro. You might notice that we don't set the margins here, right? Because that's...
No, that might change on based on where we use it. We have included some margin 0 on the H1, for instance, because we have to reset
the browser default.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So okay, but this is very simple. Let's show. I want to show where the power lies of this of doing it this way.
Okay.
So we
luckily.
We have prepared an aside box. It's just like a little did you know info box. You want to have it right next to next to the text.
Yeah.
It's an inset like in a magazine.
Yeah.
But we have now it uses default styling, and I think that doesn't quite look right.
No, as you see, the problem here is immediately that actually the did you know is larger than the H2 we've defined, so there's a problem with the hierarchy here. I don't really mind the text inside, but it could be a tiny smidge smaller. So let's set that up.
Yeah, so what we're going to do, we're going to say, okay, all H2 within an aside. Now we want that to be type header of size type header 3.
Yeah, so it's one level smaller.
It's one level smaller. But now it doesn't really look good in relation to the body copy within the...
Exactly. Now the problem is much more apparent. It's a bit on the large side. So we're going to have to aside to the paragraph.
The paragraph as well. And we want that to have our smaller text.
Exactly. And it should be tinier.
Okay. So that's basically how you can work with a type system, and still, as you see, the header in relation to the copy within the aside is still, the relation is still, it still looks good because the relation has been defined up front, and you can use that use it like that.
And you can basically use it, the style independent of the actual HTML tag.
Yeah, exactly. That's really cool.
Yeah. And that actually brings up another point. There's been a discussion on Twitter between myself and Hayden Pickering and a dozen of other people about how do you size font sizes? Do you do that in pixels or EM or in percent or in rem?
That's actually a good question. My belief is that before there was the rem unit that you should use EM, but there are some problems when using EM, and that's when you're going to nest HTML element. EM and percentage, I think they're interoperable. They basically do the same. But if you're going to nest an element within another element, it will double up the EM. So if you have 1.5 EM and you're going to put an element of 2 EM in there, that's going to multiply into 3, whatever base size that was. 3 times that base size. So that may not work. There are, however, cases where this is really useful to have this relationship and have it inherit from above. For instance, we made this aside example. We could have also just done, okay, aside font size 80%, and it would have scaled everything as well. But that would be another. But that's less, in my opinion, that's less predictable. That's much harder to comprehend, and we work a lot with CMSs where the user can combine all kinds of elements and put them inside each other, and that will result in
very strange things.
Strange results. Okay. So I prefer to have font size in rem. I'm not very fond of pixels.
Me neither.
Because what is a pixel?
What is a pixel is a good question, and especially if you define body, or you define a font size on the HTML tag, for instance, and you do that in pixel, then you might deviate from what is a standard font size in a browser on any given device. That's actually a part of the discussion that we were having on Twitter, because people said, well, if you set it to 100%, then it will just be 100% on whatever device you're using. It won't be, 16 pixels on a very high density display might be very small. So there was that.
Yeah, and maybe they set the default in the browser higher.
Exactly. So that they actually have like 20 pixels as a 100% font size.
So you would set you wouldn't set something we do very often is on the HTML tag, the root element, we will set something like 16 pixels or whatever, and then use rems for the type system, the rest of the type system. Exactly. So what you're actually saying is we should define 100% or 82.5% to get the 10 pixel thing. That's because 82.5% of 16 pixels is like 10 pixels. Yeah. So then one rem is 10 pixels. But
but you don't 100% might not be 16 pixels on any given device, right?
No, but still, if you use 82.5%, that would still work, and it may not be 10 pixels on that specific device, but it still would be
proportion will be right.
Scaled.
And that's basically what we want. That is what type system is really all about. Is about proportionally scaling things.
Yes.
So it actually makes sense.
It actually does. Yes. So there's one last thing I want to talk about, and that's Is there something in the type system that you have to do when dealing with responsive? Is there something specific you have to do, or do you normally just scale when you use rem sizing, you just scale the root element size? Or
I usually put media queries on the HTML tag for this. I do most of my spacing in rem or EM.
Okay.
Actually, most of it in rem. So I have, on the HTML tag, I have multiple media queries if needed, and they basically scale the type for me, and that will also scale my rem spacing, for instance.
And your type system.
And my entire type system. So I don't have to make individual media queries in each mix-in, because that would be exhausting and hard to read, I think.
And it will also output a lot of CSS garbage.
Yeah, so let's not do that.
So, okay.
But that's basically like a very quick fix for that. It might not work for all situations that way, that you can just say, I want it globally to be this, and then everything will magically scale. You would still have to look at each individual case and see if what you defined in the HTML will actually work there. It's still viable there.
Okay, good.
So that covers about everything we want to talk about typographic systems.
Yeah, and everything we have time for in this episode.
I guess so.
So thanks for liking, commenting, and subscribing. And thanks to our sponsors, DigitPaint and Asphalt Photo.
See you in the next one.